Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are returning on the back of my first refereeing performance at the weekend. I'm not sure if I'll get another gig on that basis. Welcome. If you are here for the first time, thank you so much for your attendance. I'm joined by three returning guests to Last Word on Spurs, three talkers, straight talkers who are going to tell you where things are at with our football club, because I haven't got a bloody clue. Back on the show, George Achillea's in the house. George, how are you? What a season, bud. What a season.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm okay. I had the little highs of AZ Alkmaar or RZ Alkmaar, however you pronounce it, and then, yeah, straight back to reality on the weekend. But you know what? I'm feeling good. I'm fit. I'm healthy. Everything else in life is great, so I can't complain.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You know, when people ask how you are, and everyone knows that you love your football. Everyone goes to you, how are you? I said, yeah, everything apart from my footballing life, I'm actually fine. But when I just, it sounds silly at the moment, when I go and even think about Tottenham in the morning or before I go to bed at night, I just think, I can't, how am I still doing this? Like, how are we all still doing what we're doing? Like, in terms of just existing as a Spurs fan. I know it sounds brutal. I know there's been tough times under supporting this football club, but it feels like we're going right through the ringer again, yet again. Back on the show, Miles at Spurs Kings in the house. Miles, sorry, this is really impromptu. I know we had to rush to get the kids down. It's been a 10, 12-hour turnaround. I know you don't do it for me, so I love you very much. I'm sorry.
Bro, do you know what? I'm more gutted. No offense to George and Brian, but there's no TJ. What am I doing here? Why am I even here tonight?
We've just stuck TJ back on the Sunlander after Sunday. He's got to recover.
I left him in the lurch Sunday, so
TJ never got a word in. He never got a word in on Sunday. That's probably the quietest I've ever been on Sunday.
He was just there eating popcorn. I was like, go TJ, that's my boy. But no, all good.
I tell you, honestly, Sunday show, I think for anyone that, again, loves this fan base and loves the football club, I think Sunday's a representation of where a lot of fans are. Just that show sums up just how heartbroken we are and just the state of our football club again. Which brings me on nicely to somebody that always seems to tell us the state of this football club on a regular basis. Second time on the show, there'll be more to come. We're going to look forward to seeing him in the upcoming protests as well. Brian, from Tottenham on Tour's back. Brian, how are you? Thank you for making it work. I know this is a short turnaround, this one.
Well, first of all, Ricky, thanks for asking me to come back on. It's a pleasure to be back here. Big up to everyone in the comments. Big up to everyone on the panel. Yeah, even loving the international break. Spurs free. It's like the antibiotics, an international break from Spurs. And with today's going on, that just shows that there's never a dull moment, is there?
No. Do you know what? I mean, I've got to say, look, maybe you're blessed from a content perspective with Tottenham that you've always got stuff to talk about. And I actually mean always I've got stuff to talk about. But it would be nicer if things were calmer. But this is the football club that we chose. Some of us didn't have an option. I always say that. I had no option, just to be very, very clear. Had I had an option, I may have well very chosen differently. But we're here now, as we say, and we have to move on. And look, we're bringing this show to you for those that are unaware of this. 2 years to the day where Antonio Conte had that infamous press conference rant where part of that what was said, they're used to it here. They don't play for something important. They don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. Tottenham's story is this. 20 years, there is the owner, and they've never won something. 2 years on from that, has a huge amount really changed. I mean, we're back here again. The 18-month cycle of rinse and repeat continues where here we are, yet another Spurs manager under a huge amount of pressure. And at the point where we are now in March, where pretty much Spurs, in terms of the Premier League, are on the beach, which I know many feel that we put it in for a lot of the season in terms of the Premier League, and it is pretty much Europa League or bust. I mean, many would probably feel it wouldn't be an international break if Tottenham weren't heading into it on the back of a defeat. Spurs have not won a match before an international break since 2023, where you've got to go back to when they beat 10 men Luton in October of that year. And, I mean, I want to try and start the show on a positive, but I don't quite know where the positives are at the moment with regards to Tottenham. There's so much to get into on this show. Look, we're going to discuss, obviously, Postecoglou's position right now. Where are we on that? Of course, there's been news in the last 24 hours that once again, Mauricio Pochettino has declared his love and would love to manage Tottenham one day. Where does that one day come in? We'll see. There has been news also over the last 24 hours that Andoni Iraola is Tottenham's #1 managerial target in the summer. On that shortlist as well is led to believe Marco Silva, who is under consideration, and also Brentford's Thomas Frank, also on that list. So we'll bring you all the latest news with regards to the candidates in waiting. God, I bet they're so excited by the challenge that faces them. And I mean, it is mad when you're sitting here. You know, we've gone through crazily 7 managers since that era where we let Pochettino go. And, you know, I'm lost already. And we're 6 minutes in. Let's go to George Achillea to kick us off. I mean, George, look, we're at a point where, you know, we're 19 defeats across the whole season, 15 defeats by mid-March in the Premier League. With still 9 games remaining. We're going to go to Stamford Bridge. We're going to go to Anfield. We're going to go to the London Stadium. George, what's going on with this football club? Please try and help me understand where we're at.
Oh, God, I don't know how I'm going to do that. It's been a nightmare, let's be real, except obviously for the Europa League at the moment. We obviously got through to the next round. I'm very much looking forward to going to Germany. Whether the result will make that a worthwhile trip, I do not know. That's one thing I have to worry about. But yeah, it's a complete mess. And I can completely understand why so many people are Ange out. And I guess we'll probably go straight into it. Like, I would say that I'm not there when you're talking about, like, at this very moment, would I sack him right now? My answer is still no. And the reasons for that are, to be honest, it's mainly to do with who we can get in instead of him. Because I feel like at this very moment, there is not a single manager out there that we are able to get now, like for the end of this, for the rest of the season. It will be someone that's coming in the summer. And
one thing I want to ask you, if you don't mind me coming back on this very quickly,
sure.
Are the players still playing for the manager, in your opinion?
I think so, because look, we've been through so many managers, right? And a lot of the times you can really, really see when they're down tools. And like they won't even give like answers in press conferences. They're really generic. But like when you're seeing Spence, Romero, Kulusevski, these players are like Maddison even as well in all of his interviews. They're giving some serious backing towards him. So it feels like to me that they still rate him. Now, I don't know if that's because we play this like ultra attacking football. Maybe it's more that they love the style of football itself rather than what we had under Conte, say. So I don't think they're not like down in tools or anything like that, in my opinion. Not yet, anyway. But for me, it's more like you're basically given the option of Ange for the rest of the season or Ryan Mason. And I, more than anything, do not want to see Ryan Mason in charge for the 3rd time. And it's not going to yield any different results for what anyone thinks, because he's literally one of the assistant managers or like one of the coaches under Ange. It's not going to change. So I personally would rather have the manager that's there, that the players clearly seem to like and want to back, just to see out the season and see what happens in the Europa League, because that's basically it. Like you said, it's do or die with the Europa League. If we get knocked out of that, then fine. I'm more than happy to see him go, because it's just been abysmal. But, and obviously this is the biggest caveat and the biggest but, if we do win the Europa League, I don't see how you could sack this guy, because no one's done it for over 40 years at Spurs. Genuinely, like what is it like? You could kick on and we've got Champions League football, attract other players. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Look, that's
on that point, just before I go bring on the other guys here, I mean, what's your thoughts about Ange Postecoglou managing Tottenham in the Champions League?
Me or
you, G? What I mean, very quick on that. What's your thoughts of Ange Postecoglou managing Tottenham in the Champions League?
Yeah, I mean that I don't know. It's hard to say because there's too many factors. Like I said, there it's more if you win the Europa League, you've started to get a winning mentality in the team potentially. Yep. Very. This is why I have to caveat. It's a very big potentially, and you don't know who you're able to sign in the summer because of it.
Yep.
But I do obviously worry about the fact that we obviously play up the high line and we leave ourselves open at the back. But then again, the number one manager that everyone seems to be creaming over is Iraola, and he will offer the exact same thing. The style of football is exactly the same under Ange. I'm seeing Bournemouth fans tweeting every single week,
but I think
especially recently, that they're getting killed for injuries and killed for their style of football.
I think with all due respect, though, the only thing I would say is that with Iraola, whilst there has been, you can't disagree with what you said there, George, he has a high amount of volume of injuries. The reality is that from what we've seen from him is a progression from a number of players that have been very well coached and very well, I think, developed in a similar period to Ange Postecoglou. You can't get away from that. Iraola, which we'll come on to shortly, did join Bournemouth at the same time, retrospectively, that Ange Postecoglou joined Tottenham. And the two clubs, in terms of their trajectory, have gone really opposite ways. When you're looking, okay, maybe season one, you maybe argue, obviously, Ange did get Tottenham fifth without Harry Kane. There's no doubt about that. This second season, there's been a huge amount of injuries. I think we've been very sympathetic on this show on. But at the same time, I mean, Marlon, coming over to you, look, I think we're being honestly true here. I know there's been a lot of doubts from not only regular guests on this show, but fans as well. I mean, look, I happen to think, and people might disagree, I think we've got one of the most loyal set of fan bases in world football for what we've had to go through. And when I mentioned that point there, that we are again potentially looking on another manager search. You know, we've had 7 managers in the last 5 years. I think we all collectively really, really, really wanted this to work. Of course, we all wanted it to work. But what you can't get away from is that when you have seen, you know, a number of red flags through this last 18 months, it's very hard to just keep ignoring those red flags and just essentially, as a byproduct, wish, okay, it's the injuries. And, you know, we've said it a lot, you know, when you look back at the fact, Pochettino, they sacked him 5 months after a Champions League final. Antonio Conte, Spurs sacked him when he was in 4th. Jose Mourinho, they sacked Jose when we were in the week building up to a cup final. I mean, there'll be many people that are really out there thinking, how has Ange Postecoglou got the time that he has at Tottenham, given our not only run of form, and the stats are, of course, pretty damning, but especially we'll come on to it as well later in the show, he has got this kind of weird fixation with not being able to bite when it, well, I think it's probably a big problem, biting when it comes to fans and that interaction where there is a lot of concerns about whether he actually gets the club. And I think, again, Man City in that game, which we go back to of last season, was, I think, a real moment where he just simply didn't understand the correlation on that day with the fan base. I mean, where are we, Miles, in your mind when it comes to Ange and Tottenham and this football club?
Do you know what? I think, you know, after watching that video on Saturday where he you know, I'm still questioning whether it was a Fulham fan or a Spurs fan, because it was in the Fulham end. We don't really know, but he's asking him what he's doing, and he's biting. In that situation, if you're starting to bite as a manager, you're starting to feel the pressure, and you can blatantly see the pressure is on Ange at the moment. And he's being asked questions. He's coming out with answers that are contradicting stuff he said about 18 months ago or 6 months ago. And it's getting to a point where I'm looking at going, I think we just need to put him out of his misery a little bit and go, it's done. And I think this is where Daniel Levy needs to step up as a chairman and see what is actually going on around in the change room, around in the club, and go, I have sacked managers for a lot less, and I just need to see something going. I don't want to see Mason again. I don't want to do this. The problem that you've got is at the moment is that it's the tactics that are doing us in, and it's the amount of shots we are conceding on our goal. It's the changing of the starting lineups in the last few games on where you're going, especially on Sunday when you're looking at it, and the Sunday before, and there was no attacking midfielder, even though we haven't got much games coming up, and then the international break was coming, and he's not tweaking it into sense of going, okay, let me just put Maddison on there, or let me just put Bergvall on there to just make it, you know, to get it tactically right and actually put some pressure on the other teams. But right now, he seems to be getting everything wrong, everything he's doing. And I think we got quite lucky against AZ in that second half, because after they scored, we were a bit under pressure, and then all of a sudden we got the third and it was all done. But you have to look at the away game. You have to then look at the other games that have happened recently, and this is with our players back. Bournemouth, that first half was terrible. Manchester City, first half, again, was terrible. How many shots did we concede against Ipswich? And we won that 4-1. And you can blatantly see that it's just not working out. And you talk about the fans and Ange. I know we're going to get onto it later. Actually, I'm not going to mention it now. I'm going to mention it later when we talk about a certain other person. But he mentioned something quite similar and the problems he had at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So it's one of them. And I do agree with George. If he goes and wins the Europa League, he has to stay. There's no way he can leave this club, unfortunately. And I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that. But
why
not? Because if we were to win it, does it then mean that everyone looks at it and goes, actually, let's go and back him. Let's go and put money. Let's go get him some Champions League quality players. And look, I know the club never done it, but let's go get him some Champions League quality players. And at the end of the day, the reason why we don't have a manager right now, a new manager, is because I tell you now, I'll bet you in January when the club were going through their problems, I bet you they put feeders out there to look for another manager, and no one took the bait. No one said they wanted to come. And Spurs got put in a situation, probably the first time in years, where it's gone, oh, nobody actually wants to come. We're kind of stuck. So he can't just go and sack, because obviously Mason and Wells are part of the issue. They're part of the problem. So where do you go from here? So he's kind of gone, we're not going to get relegated. If he wins the Europa League, that's a bonus. If he doesn't, I can sack him at the end of the season and go, well, I gave you what you wanted, you're attacking football, and it didn't work. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. I mean, Brian, bringing you in, look, the reality is, whether it's the lack of a current viable mid-season alternative or, you know, the fact of where Spurs are generally at the moment, being able to maybe not attract an elite manager, given the plight of the football club, of all due respect, you know, there's no doubt about it. And has received more patience than what's ever been dished out before by, let's be honest, a club that really has been one of the most impatient when it comes to letting go of managers. I mean, where are you, Brian, at the moment with regards to Ange Postecoglou's future at Tottenham?
Put it this way: if we got told it's Ryan Mason tomorrow, I'll gladly take it till the end of the season. We look at Europe and think that whilst he's there, go it. But Paul O'Keefe put something out today, and I'm just like, if someone had said to us at the beginning of the season that come mid going into late March, we would have 6 defeats more than Everton, 6 more than Palace, 6 more than Bournemouth, 7 more than Fulham, and 9 more than Brighton going into this part of the season, I think every single Spurs fan would sit around and go, not a chance. Not a chance. Like when Pochettino, we said the Champions League was papering over the cracks, getting through to the next round of the Europa League as papered over the cracks. And you also look at it, AVB got sacked, Chelsea bought in Roberto Di Matteo.
Yep.
What happened? They went and did it. The filth down the road, got rid of whoever it was. They brought in Mikel Arteta. They went on to win the FA Cup. I think there's a split in the camp of 50-50 of who's playing for him, who's not. I don't think there's any chance we can win in Europe at all. I hate to say it. And I just don't see, with all, we keep hearing these stats that this could be the worst defeats, the lowest point total, all these things that are coming out. I don't see anymore how he can have any leg to stand on, in my personal opinion. And right now, you bring in Ryan Mason till the end of the season. Yes, we've had him twice. And obviously, he lost the cup final to Pep. It was stupid to have him and sack Jose.
Yep.
But he did okay in the Premier League. He only had we've only got a small amount of games to go on. But we're not doing anything in the league. There is a chance in Europe. He will play with a more defensive setup or a more pragmatic setup. I just can't see until the end of the season why it can't be Mason. I tried to defend Ange as much as I could until the North London derby, and that was it. Then you look at the Everton and Leicester back to back. You look at Leicester, even since that game, they've lost every single game, and in every single Premier League game, they haven't even scored a goal. Yeah, they made us look ridiculous. I just don't see how this man has a chance. I really don't. And as much as I wanted a manager to succeed, I don't think this guy can win us the Europa League. I don't even think this guy can get through to the next round of the Europa League. So I would be right. If we got told we had Mason till the end of the season, I'm fine. If you told me we got anyone till the end of the season, I'm fine. I just think we have to cut ties now. And just to end off with how you started, Antonio Conte's words, I think, are even more true today than they were 2 years ago. And that's I don't know how it could be defended any longer.
But on those words, though, then it doesn't matter who comes in because it's all going to be the same no matter what.
Yeah,
because we're still got the same ownership, still providing the same.
Of course,
the same club.
But I think that's the correlation. I think that's again why we're going through this cycle where, with all due respect, until something fundamentally changes at the top of the football club, this is the way it's always going to be. And that's why I'm really, we'll come on to it a bit later in the show. When you're trying to attract any manager of caliber, and look, Tottenham had this problem, let's be honest about it, when they went searching for Ange's, but obviously for Conte's successor, where Slot, they obviously like the look of Slot, he turned Tottenham down, whether that was due to financial, whether it was just down to the fact that he looked at the football club and thought they're not where they want to, he's not where they want them to be. I don't know, but I mean, my feeling, and again, as a host, you could argue hosts are one that drives the show, and really are not really the ones to have an opinion. But people know me that I've always had an opinion when it comes to Tottenham. I'm not trying to say my opinion. I just think, thanks, Miles. I think if Tottenham, in my opinion, had any real sense of an ambition to go and win this Europa League, you've got to make a change in these 18 days. You've got 18 days to find somebody out there that can, in my opinion, try and galvanise the group, whether it's an interim. I think you'd have to look at an interim to try and get these players on side and playing. And George, I hear what you're saying, that you feel he's got players that are playing for him. My concern for me is that when I look at the domestic form, which is inexcusable, when you're thinking about the fact we've had 15 defeats in the Premier League and we've hit mid-March and we've still got to go to Anfield, Stamford Bridge, the London Stadium, we're going to rack up a record there. And you know what? I mean, I am a bit of a stats man. So when I hear, and I'm so sorry, guys, to do this to many out there, they may have heard some of these before. When I read out some of the stats here at the moment, fewest Spurs points after 29 matches in Premier League history, 93-94 season 30, 97-98 season 30, 24-25 this season being 34. And what you've got to bear in mind is that in the 93-94 and the 97-98 season, Tottenham were considered to be a mid-table side. So Tottenham, honestly, in reality, at that point, were a side that were really finishing 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. This is the club that in the last 6, 7, 8 years, what everything about the ownership, this is the club that has been in and around the top 4, the top 6. That's what they've been used to. And when you look at the fact, I think, Brian said at the start of the show, in the last 38 league matches, equivalent to our whole season, and just picked up 44 points. Yes, in this period, he's had 2 decimation of injuries. And again, with regards to those injuries, there's lots of theories as to how those injuries have occurred. Is it due to playing these players to gain intensity? Are we rushing players back? Is it down to the medical staff? Whereas we know, and I've said this before, Tottenham put out 3 adverts on LinkedIn for medical applications for people to come into the football club. But also when you consider, we've had the most home goals conceded first in the calendar year of 2024. We went 1-0 down in 15 home games during the 2024 calendar year, the most ever by a Premier League team in a single year. We had the worst home winless run since 2008. We went 5 straight home matches without a win in the Premier League, our longest winless run at home since 2008, a year that also saw us pick up our lowest Premier League points total, 52 in a calendar year. Shots faced in the calendar year of 2025. In the first 11 games of 2025, we faced 167 shots on goal, averaging over 15 per game. This is more than the 40 shots higher than any other Premier League club in all competitions during that period, including the relegation sides. We are on course as things stand to have our most ever defeats in a domestic season, whether it's outside the Premier League, since Ozzy Ardiles. We've conceded the most goals in a single calendar year since 2008. We're on our longest run of consecutive Premier League defeats in 16 years. It is pretty damning, if we're being honest about it. I know, G, you said there for you that at the moment you'd allow Ange to take it on for the rest of the season. Do you feel he has got the ability to be able to take this squad all the way in the Europa League? Do you feel like he's still got the tactical nous, the in-game management to get past the sides that Tottenham are going to have to get past? Again, they're 4th in the Bundesliga. They're not a bad team. I have to say that. You look at what also maybe Tottenham on their journey to come, Lazio potentially on that journey as well. Bodo Glimt, maybe that might be an easier tie than Olympiacos. I mean, look, you only have to win a couple of those games. You could draw another couple and you're in a final. You've got the confidence, G, have you, that we could go all the way with him still?
I have more confidence with him than I do with Ryan Mason, and those are the only 2 options we have right now. Genuinely, I don't see a world, and this is nothing against Ryan Mason himself. I love him. If he is at the helm for the final, how many games would it be? 5 games to win that trophy. I don't see a
It's
way.
like less than that, is it? 4-5. Yeah, 4-5.
Yeah, I don't see a way of us winning that with him. I would much rather see an actual manager that has more experience in cup competitions than him for the rest of for the season. That's just my opinion. Don't get me wrong. Like, I still have, like, this is probably making me sound like I'm like this ultra Anjin and I think he's the next coming of Christ. But I still have a lot of questions around his substitutions and tactics. But when it's between those two, I 100% back Ange more than I back Ryan Mason for the Europa League. I mean, we've beaten Frankfurt before 2 years ago, so in the cup competition, so it's not impossible. But you have to agree that these teams are obviously in a better situation than we are.
Yeah,
but yeah, like I said, between those two, I'm going Ange over Mason.
Just to ask you, G, because again, we get live comments that come into the show for listeners on audio. Some of these live comments are suggesting, and again, these might not be popular. Someone like Rafa Benitez, who, to be fair to Rafa, he had a horrendous record at Everton, but he's a man that is a specialist when it comes to the cup competitions. You know, again, he's guided the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool to cup competitions. If I was to offer you somebody like him or Terzic to come in right now, you still say no?
Terzic is a very defensive manager. It would be going from one into the other. And this is what I mean about like looking for the succession of Ange as well. Like, if we've decided that he isn't the one, then completely fine. But we need to be Tottenham and smart is going to be an interesting combination. But we need to be a smart club and stick with this ethos that we want of really attractive attacking football. Someone like Iraola brings that for sure. You've also just got to have the caveat that he also has had a lot of injuries at Bournemouth, and that could still happen. But I'd much rather target a manager like that where we're sticking with the ethos. Because look at someone like a team like Brighton. They, I guess, behind the manager's backs, they always have succession plans.
They always do,
and pretty much always play the same style of football. Obviously, there's going to be little tweaks from manager to manager, but every manager after the previous one seems to still stick with that same philosophy in football, because that translates to the players that they've still got, because it's easier to shift the manager than the players. So you want managers to play that way. So if these players that we have now are really used to attacking football and playing a certain style, whoever comes in next has to be a manager that does that also. You can't then do what we did with the opposite of Conte and flip to someone like Terzic or someone that's going to play defensive football. It's just not going to work.
Not even. I mean, it's interesting the point you make there. I mean, Brian, to come to you on this, because you've gone on the opposite end of the spectrum. You've said for you, if you could, you change him right now. Does it really matter, you know, for these next 3-4 months, what brand of football we play if it ends up winning Tottenham a trophy? Because I think if we're looking at the current trajectory of how we're playing, honestly, we're no longer playing Ange, are we? You know, despite the fact that we've got a lot of the squad back, you could argue that, you know, the likes of Solanke, Mickey van der Ven, Christian Romero haven't had a huge amount of game time recently. But if the fact is now about, right, Tottenham's goal for the rest of the season is to win the Europa League, do we in our heart of hearts think, given that I, in my opinion, feel the league form, this is again how I've felt really, you know, in the last few weeks, that league form has got to be a momentum gainer to help you then prepare for the games in the Europa League. But if we're not using that to help us, then I don't see how Tottenham are going to have the ability to just keep turning this on a one-off game. And we saw it really in the AZ Alkmaar first leg game, how poor the performance was. So would you go against the ethos of attacking football just for 3 or 4 months if it meant bringing someone in like a Terzic or Rafa Benitez or another interim manager? You know, it is not our job to find the manager. You know, we are fans of the football club. It is down to the ownership to give the fans the best opportunity of success for this season.
I think the best way to look at it, Ricky, we see fans saying that with the Ange way, at least we're being entertained and it's exciting football, which I can understand. People want to see that brand of football. But if you said to me, see an end-to-end 2-2 draw or a 1-goal win or defeat, or see a more defensive, rigid, boring performance, but Spurs win the game, I'm choosing that option every single time. Give me 1-0s with very little action and 3 points, rather than roll the dice and loads of excitement, end-to-end stuff. I think, like you said, right now, as George said, we've got 5 games that could get us to Europe right now, that could get us to a final, should we change the manager, or even with Ange. And we need to be defensive. You look at it, if we want to get the best out of Van der Ven and Romero, we need to protect them. We need to use a number 6. If we're going to get the best, so we're not so open down the wings, we need to stop inverting wingers and having them halfway down the other end of the pitch and out of position. I think we all saw on Match of the Day on match day 2 on Sunday just how bad the running was when Bentancur's outrunning Mateus Tutel. It's just so lazy. And I don't think other managers like a Benitez, you mentioned, or whoever it may be, will accept these kind of things. I don't care how we get to the final. I don't care if it's 1-0 all the way and we score a goal in the 90th minute every single one, as long as we get there. And you're right, the Premier League games should be used as a springboard to try out what they're going to do in Europe, because the league is done. And we know week in, week out, with Ange Postecoglou, it's going to be the same style of play, just mix and match the players all the time so they don't get any continuity together. And I would literally, like Dennis just said, it's a results business. And we're not getting the results. So without a doubt, I would take going defensive. I really would.
And I got to say,
just quickly, I definitely agree. There's huge problems with the way we're playing at the moment. But equally, I think it's just very much too much of a hypothetical that we're just going to win 1-0 in these games. We had the best manager in world football at being defensive and trying to win 1-0 every game. And that ended as a shit show. Sorry for the language as well.
No, it's fun.
I think there's too many fundamental errors for us and fundamental issues for us to just assume that we can just bring in a defensive manager to see out games and we'll do that to the end of the tournament.
Do you know what, G, for me, though, it's not even about having a defensive manager or changing the philosophy. I think the big thing for me, Miles, is that I'm looking at players like Destiny Adoghi, Rodrigo Bentancur, Brennan Johnson, whatever people think about Brennan Johnson, Heung-Min Son. I go through this squad and people might think I'm deluded. I do not think these players are as bad as what we are seeing right now. I refuse to believe these players are as bad as what we're seeing. Yes, I take into account that Destiny Adoghi is just coming back from an injury. Brennan Johnson is a player. Look, I think he divides the fan base. If Brennan Johnson isn't scoring, what else is he doing? Again, you can't tell me that there is not somebody out there that can't get something from these players over the course of 7, 8, 9 games. With all due respect, we saw a manager bounce of Ange in the first 10. And look how bad it's been since then. So I don't want to keep doing down Ange. It isn't anything personal for me. It never is personal. For me, what I want to see is the success of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I couldn't care who's in charge. For me, I couldn't care who's in charge. I think the last manager I got really sentimental towards and absolutely loved was Mauricio Pochettino. And isn't it mad here we are 7 years later and we are seemingly being told he wants to come back to the football club, which again we'll come on to shortly. But just on that point, Miles, we can't get away from the fact, again, I will repeat this just so, again, for the balance of the show, this man has had a decimation of injuries in 2 successive seasons. And we're having this situation now where, the form in the Premier League, it doesn't lie. It has been absolutely horrendous. And, we were told by Ange, and maybe this is not a fair barometer to suggest it now because these players have only been back a short time. Ange Postecoglou said, this is Ange's words, when we get our players back, we will be an outstanding team. Those were Ange Postecoglou's words. That is what he told us. We're not outstanding at the moment, Marlon, are we? So I made that point. I think if there's any ambition from the football club in these next 16, 17 days, go and act and bring somebody in that is going to lift the group. Is that unfair of me to suggest that, Marlon?
It's not unfair. The only issue that...
Is it unrealistic?
I think it's going to be unrealistic in the sense of Rafa Benitez and a man like that is not going to galvanize this squad. He might do, because he has won stuff in the past. But as soon as you said that, I went in my head, Gareth Southgate. And I'm like, why am I thinking of Gareth Southgate? I should not be thinking of Gareth Southgate right now. But when you look what he done with the England team and galvanized the squad and made it feel like a club feel and things like that, maybe this is what we just need for the next 9 games. It's the culture off the pitch that needs to kind of change, and it kind of needs to go through everyone else. Because at this present moment, none of the players, for me, and I kind of get, they're not going to come out and say they're not playing for the manager. None of them are not going to come out. They're all going to defend and do what they have to do because the club have basically pushed them to go, if you sit there and criticize, they're not going to play. But you can clearly see by the way they're playing that half of them don't like this style.
It's body language as well, Miles, isn't it? It's body language as well for me. It's going that far in terms of the running percentages.
So Romero is probably someone who does like it, but he doesn't like what's going on behind the scenes because, again, as we saw in his statement, he's thanking club doctors of Argentina and not thanking the Spurs stuff. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? So there is a lot of issues behind the scenes that the players want to address, but they can't exactly tell us what is going on. And I think Romero, when he wants his move in the summer, we're going to get a full-blown interview in the Argentinian press about everything, just so he can move to Real Madrid. But do we look at someone like Ten Hag for 10 games? And I know a lot of people are going, oh, come on, he had Man United in the worst situation. But you said something earlier. If you want to give us any chance in the cup, Ten Hag has won the FA Cup and the League Cup in a crap Man United side who, when you look at it, they're in a worse situation than us. But if you go look at his Ajax team that we played, they were complete. Everyone always asked him, why are you not playing the Ajax way? Maybe we have the players because we've gone for that attacking style. Maybe Ten Hag, maybe for 10 games, might do it. I'm not suggesting him. I'm just saying, what if we're looking to go in this Europa League? Because for me, I sit there and I look, Frankfurt are a bloody good side. And I think
in the Bundesliga. This is a good side. This is a good side.
And we're 14th. This is the bit that people need to understand. We're actually 14th.
And joined 16th.
Yeah. And then, and it's only on goal difference, which we can score goals. The reason why we're ahead in the table.
Can I just say another stat that went at the weekend was the fact that obviously Fulham were the second side that have scored more than just a 1-goal deficit against us. I mean, that was a lot of. I don't mean to be rude to a lot of people that were still in supportive of Ange. I think there are a lot of people that were suggesting the fact that Liverpool are the only team that have been able to beat us by more than 1 goal. I think it's been a really, really tricky season, and it's mad that we're having conversations here. And the names of Benitez, Southgate, Terzic. I mean, all due respect, George doesn't mention these names, but I am.
I'm mentioning it. Yeah,
how crazy is
it's me crazy that it's crazy to think that I am mentioning these names and I'm looking because if you told me 7 years ago, these would be the names I'll be looking at, and an ex-Manchester United manager only because he's won a cup,
who's just been sacked mid-season.
He's just been sacked, and I'm looking at him going, oh, actually. Because of what Andrew's doing this year, I'm looking at you going, all right, mate. It's like, what am I doing?
Just to play devil's advocate here. And this is why, again, I'm in the camp of not sacking Ange now and waiting until the summer. Does the table form actually really matter? Because I've looked at the past cups that we've won. 2007, 2008, we finished 11th.
Yep.
98, 99, we won the League Cup. We finished 11th. The last time we won the Europa Cup, back in 82, I think it was, we finished 8th. So, I mean, really, truly, to be a cup team that we're at the level where we don't have a team like a Man City that can compete across 4 fronts, do you need to have good league form to actually win a trophy?
But you need to show. I think in that sense, because you need to show a performance in those games, and I think what we're not seeing.
We're not seeing
let's take like I said, let's take Manchester City first half. Let's take Bournemouth first half. We're not seeing this team actually play, and even Alkmaar, it was just so crap to see. And then even in the home leg,
the home game was much better than we've seen.
But it wasn't anywhere near what we saw when we were beating Aston Villa.
Oh no, definitely anywhere near that level.
And this is the issue, because I take an issue with it, because you've now got to take that form into the cup. And when we were finishing 11th with Ramos and stuff, we were still pushing certain performances. It all fell off after we won the League Cup with Ramos, and then we went and sold Keane and Berbatov and all that. And of course, it was always going to fall off when you give him Pavlyuchenko and Fraser Campbell. He had no chance. But if you look at the other cup runs, we've always been that mid-table side. But right now, we're not a mid-table side. We are literally near the bottom, and we can't even win a home game. We can't even win an away. We've lost so many games. If the Premier League was a better standard, we'd be fighting relegation, and that's been the biggest issue. Like
we're very lucky. There is 3 terrible teams in the Premier League.
Teams. 4 if you count Wolves.
It's definitely fair. It's just more. My point was more like, what if he's just not focusing on the league at all because he's focusing on the. I know he says in his interviews that it's. Every game matter, but we saw from the rotation against Fulham that clearly he doesn't think that game was important.
But I think the question back to you, Gian, to let you answer is that your question proposed there is, does it matter about the league form? I think the question is whether you feel that we can turn it on on 2, 3,
No,
4
it's
one-off games? Is that can we?
And it's the Aston Villa game, which is the most. The Aston Villa Cup game. Let's take Liverpool away because we always lose at
and on that Villa
Anfield,
Cup game, we can see within a minute of the Villa Cup game.
Yeah,
within a
and
minute.
I think that's the most concerning thing from what we've seen for the team in the cups this season.
Mm.
Apart from the Manchester United at home and Manchester City at home, and the Liverpool in the semi-final, the rest of the cup games, Coventry was terrible. Tamworth was embarrassing.
96
Aston
minutes.
Villa, Aston Villa was bad. So he might be concentrating on the cups, but their performances are not showing us that they're actually able to even turn it on. And then we go and get Alkmaar at home. Elfsberg was only saved by the kids. We'll be completely honest there. And I can't remember we played in the other cup game, but this is the problem. The team have clearly shown they just can't turn it on for the cups, and this is why then it starts concerning you about the league form as well. Because if they're playing that bad in the cups as well, you're looking at going, well, it's going to take a Lazio or even a Frankfurt just to carve us open. We've literally got to win both home legs by 3, in my eyes, to even stand a chance when we go into both of those away legs. And even if we play Bodo Glimt as well,
I also just think the whole thing solely rests on whether Romero and Van de Ven can stay fit, to be honest with you. Because sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was about to say the team that Marlon just mentioned that I can't pronounce. If we get them, the team that are playing Lazio, people have got to remember this is a team that lost to Pacos de Ferreira. Yes, it's a different manager. This is a team that lost to a team whose manager was in jail. This is a team that has lost away to Mura. No, I mean this goes on with the culture at this football club. So people go, oh, this is an easy game. How many times have we gone into easy games this season going, yep, this is Tottenham Hotspur. Any team that plays should win, whether it's injury problem. The Leicester game, everyone said, don't worry, they're so useless. Doesn't matter about our injuries. They're absolutely woeful. There's no excuse not to beat them. And then we lose to them, and it's, oh, what about our injuries? When the going gets tough, we go hiding at this football club. And I can't see how we can literally think that things are going to change under Ange or anything at the moment. This season just needs to be written off. Get to May.
If I said to all of you right now, are you confident we are going to beat Southampton?
Nope.
You lot would all sit there and go, and
well,
I know we backed them away.
They went one up against Liverpool, Southampton.
Yeah. So if I said to you,
we did also score 5 against them in the first half.
We did.
Yeah, we did. Right. But that was under what's his name. So if I said to you right now, we go play Southampton.
Russell Martin. Yeah.
Right. So I don't think all of us we sit there and say we're confident, but in the back of our mind, we'll go, we could Tottenham this up. And that's what's concerning, is that because of what happened against Leicester, and Leicester have been terrible. Absolutely terrible, and we're now in a situation where we're looking to play Wolves and Southampton in the next how many games, and none of us are confident. And that's,
you had Southampton. You had Southampton. You got to remember, after that, it's the second leg away at Frankfurt. So does he rest players like he has done, thinking, right, we're going to play them in Europe, and then he puts the weaker team out, which still should be able to beat a Southampton team that are at the bottom of the league. And everyone, and like Ricky just said, against Southampton in the first half, they really gave Liverpool a game. They gave Liverpool a real battle. But what do we do when it comes to that game?
I mean, it'll be interesting because obviously that game is the game obviously before the protest, and you just wonder again how that's going to be. I mean, I'd imagine, and look, Change for Spurs will obviously be putting out more details ahead of that. I would like to think, I would hope there'll be bigger numbers at that protest than there was at the previous one, because there's now much more engagement and fans are more acutely aware, obviously, what's going on with Change for Spurs and the great work they've been doing. So we'll have to see. Look, we do need to move on from Ange because obviously there's a lot of news on the show. But just a final one on this point before we round it off. Can we? I feel bad asking this question. This show has killed me the last 7-8 years. I mentioned that point. I've booked the holiday now away for 9 days in July with 2 kids under 5. I must be freaking nuts. Again, I think that's going to be a break when I come back. And Miles will tell you from experience, he's got double my number. I don't know how he's still standing. I'm earning another one of these to come back. And I'm thinking I'm going to come back into what could be still a managerial search. God, could you imagine? I hope not. G, will we win the Europa League under Ange Postecoglou?
No, I don't think we will. I think there's a chance that it would. You genuinely, you'd be lying if there isn't a chance, because if we went into the season thinking you we are one of the favourites. In fact, I think we were the favourites, weren't we, at the beginning? It was like us and
I think we
Lazio.
still. The crazy thing is, I think we still are.
Yeah, like we definitely have the facilities to win it. Like it is possible, but from what we've seen in recent games, it doesn't look like it's heading that way.
Bri?
Not a chance. Not a chance under Ange. We're still in it. We could win it technically because we're still in it. Can we win it under Ange Postecoglou? No way. No way.
Miles?
It would be the most Spursy thing ever to happen if we were. I'm going to sit there and say, I'm going to go against everything that I've been saying for the last 46 minutes and go, I think we can. Something, I don't know why, but something in the back of my head thinks we can. And
It's been the most absurd season, isn't it? Where you can't really write what's going to happen.
We need another Poch season because we were god awful in the second half of that season in the league. But we still got to the final. So
George is right. If we have Romero and Van der Ven for the rest of those Europa League games, just seeing the performance of Romero on Sunday.
Romero and Fulham was the biggest difference because the moment he went off, we were a completely different team.
Completely different team.
What did make me laugh with Romero? Definitely when you saw it with the Bassi moment where, I mean, it was unbelievable, was it? Romero, he's built this kind of physicality of being an absolute beast, and then Bassi rolls him off, and Romero just does like a somersault.
He'll want us to play Fulham again somehow, just like squeezing another fixture just so he can get revenge. He'll make it happen.
He'll turn up at the cottage just to 2-foot him. But I don't know.
Yeah, Romero and Van der Ven for me. Going back, just Romero and Van der Ven. If you sit there and tell me they're going to play every game, then yes. Yeah. If they're not, then we've got no chance. Yeah. No chance in hell.
I also have one thing to you, Miles. I do look at Ange now, and part of me just feels like put this guy out of his misery. That guy, if you go back to the first interviews to what he looks like now, I don't mean to be rude, we've aged him so quickly. Like, we've done a lot of Tottenham managers. We aged them so quickly over 18 months. I mean, the poor guy, I tell you, look, the reality is he ain't going to resign. He's got a huge multi-million-pound contract there. We'll never walk from the football club. But at the same time, this must be so tough for him and his family. And again, look, I think everyone's aware, the players, the managers, the coaching staff, the club, they all watch the show. They all watch podcasts like this. And again, they must, wonder what is going on in that camp. I don't know. Look, we do need to move on. Obviously, the news has been filtered for the last 24, 48 hours that, as things stand, Tottenham have drawn up a short list of managerial targets should they decide to part company with Ange Postecoglou at the end of the season. We understand those names that are on that managerial shortlist are Andoni Iraola. There's Marco Silva in there from Fulham. And there's also Thomas Frank on there. Thomas Frank, of course, has done some great work at Brentford. I would question, in terms of the club showing a real desire to play attacking football, whether whether Thomas Frank would be the kind of man that you'd want. You'd say they arguably are a fairly pragmatic side. But there is obviously a lot of talk right now around Andoni Iraola and the work that he has done at Bournemouth. And it's quite interesting. I saw this stat pop up for our listeners on audio, which actually shows the Premier League win percentage of certain managers in the league. Ange actually on 50% of that win percentage in comparison to Thomas Frank at 35.9%, Andoni Iraola at 34.8%, and Marco Silva at 33.3%. I need to qualify this and say that those first 10 games Ange has in his favour has massively helped him, because quite interestingly, those first 10 Premier League matches, Ange took 26 points, Iraola took just 6 points. And then when you look at the last 57 Premier League matches, Ange has taken 74 and Iraola has taken 86. So I think it's fair to say that those first 10 games of Ange's reign have really helped him in terms of that Premier League win percentage. And shouldn't I think the tear fans away from the wonderful work Iraola has done at Bournemouth, despite the fact that he has had quite a big injury pool there to deal with in his season. And I know that's one of the factors that maybe might go against him for the Tottenham job, the fact that he's had to have a number of injuries. But what you would also say is that how well was he adapted and how well has he actually done in that period of losing a number of players to injury? I think during that period, they went up to Newcastle and they won 4-1. And they've had some big, big wins, of course, under his tenureship so far. As things don't understand, Bournemouth are trying their absolute most to keep hold of him. Of course, their chairman recently came out on TalkSport and suggested they are going to sit down for more formal talks in the next few weeks due to the job that he has done. However, there is also an understanding that Iraola is at a point where he doesn't want to commit to Bournemouth, and he would be very interested in the prospect of taking over at Tottenham, and his representatives have already, to some degree, made that contact. Marco Silva's an interesting one. We have had news in the last 24 hours that the Fulham camp are trying to get him tied down to a new contract. He has a reported release clause of $6 million in his contract. So we know how much Daniel Levy is not a fan of normally paying a huge amount of compensation. If you want Marco Silva out of Fulham and in the hot seat at Tottenham, it's going to cost you at the moment in the region of $6 million. And of course, if Fulham renegotiate that contract, it could be more. As I mentioned, Thomas Frank is another name on that shortlist due to the work that he has done at Brentford. And of course, it probably is the right time also for me to bring into the fact that Mauricio Pochettino has once again provided an interview exclusively, this time to Sky Sports, where he's reiterated his desire of wanting to manage Tottenham again. He said it would be his dream. He said he still has a very, very strong relationship with Tottenham Hotspur chairman Daniel Levy. I think what you've got to bear in mind with that situation around Pochettino is that he's only recently taken over the US. I think there's no way you get him out of that contract really before 2026. So you're looking at a season in between there. Marlon is kind of waving at me and kind of suggesting maybe, is that otherwise, Marlon, with Pochettino? Do you think? What do you think?
So someone's gone on US TV. I don't know who he was, one of the journalists, and basically said there's a buyout clause for about $20 million to get him out of that contract.
Right.
And if anyone wants to trigger it, they can. Apparently, that's what's in his contract. It's massive for USA because they don't usually put a massive clause in. But this came in the last few hours, I believe. I've seen it floating around, and it was on national. It was on their national TV. So there is a buyout clause. It's just whether Spurs want to pull it and get it.
So that's him out then.
Well, I mean, it's interesting with Pochettino because, again, there has been several images that have been floating around on X, Reddit as well in the last 24 hours that we haven't put the image up for the reasons really that it's been poo-pooed, that there was a picture circulating with both Daniel Levy and Mauricio Pochettino outside a North London cafe. But just to be clear, I think that image does circulate back from 2021. There has been reports that they've met recently. Again, how much you want to believe of that, I don't know. I mean, maybe should we go for Poch first and have this quick discussion? I mean, Brian, where are you? Because look, to be honest with you, I've said this on a number of occasions. I never actually held any anger or resentment to Poch going to Chelsea because purely the fact that he was pining for the return for Tottenham all that summer. He made it abundantly clear that if Tottenham were to come calling, he would come back to the football club, and Tottenham simply never called. So there is also that argument that is he just simply a nearly man? Obviously, you know, he's gone to PSG. He's won a couple of trophies there. There will be an argument that did he really do that well at PSG? But again, you look at the way they've now changed their squad over into the kind of players they've got. They're much more of a team now than just a bunch of individuals. I mean, don't mean to be rude, but for me personally, I look at Pochettino and Postecoglou in terms of coaching levels. I think there's a million miles of difference. I'm not being rude to Ange. That's just how I feel from a coaching element. Pochettino's miles ahead of him. What do you think?
I think with this, whenever a manager's under pressure, let's bring out an interview where Poch states the bleeding obvious that he does every single time that he loves this football club and wants to come back. To me, he is being used at the moment as the manager's version of Leonardo Damiel. Every time we come to a window or there's problems, Poch loves Tottenham. Poch loves Tottenham. We all know it. When we sacked Conte and people started singing his name, as much as I would welcome him back, I do not want him anywhere near this football club with Daniel Levy. I do. If we were to get new owners tomorrow and we went and got Mauricio Pochettino, I would be over the moon and welcome him back. I just think there is so much for Pochettino to come back. Levy has to admit he's wrong. How often does he do that? The compensation, like Marlon said, I saw it on TV over here in North America. They said it's in the tens of millions. They didn't actually give a 20 or so it's going to be a whopping transfer fee. And also in that interview that broke today, he also stated about how much he wants to and how good it's going to be the manager of a host nation at the World Cup. I just don't think he comes back before the World Cup. And even if he was to come back under Levy, I think there's so much that he'd want to rip out. I think he'd want Lange and Munn gone and bring in his own staff. Will he be allowed? I also think with all the youngsters we've got, he won't get backed with leaving. Say, we've got these young players, you do this, you make them better. I would love, under new owners, if we went and made the move and brought Pochettino back, I would be all over it and in absolute raptures and happiness that he's back to finish his story. Under Daniel Levy, I don't want him anywhere near the football club, anywhere near it.
It's interesting. I mean, G, coming over to you there. I mean, look, as Brian has eloquently put it, there was a period of 518 days where Tottenham didn't spend a penny. Obviously, in that time where Pochettino was at Tottenham and obviously had the squad that he had, and there was an argument again in that period where he said around the fact, we need to put new furniture into the Palace. Where are you, Gene? I just wonder again, it's really interesting timing of this because, at the moment, he's only recently joined the US. And there is that feeling with Mauricio that even during his time at Tottenham, to use that word the kids use, twerking for opportunities. He was twerking for the Manchester United role, if you remember, at that time.
Yeah.
You now have that situation where, again, I'd love to know what's the purpose of coming out right now to say, I have a strong relationship with Daniel Levy. I want to come back to Tottenham. What's the reason for that? If the fact that he's coming out and doing it now when Postecoglou is under a huge amount of pressure, what is there to gain if he's not looking to join the club in the immediate future by doing that?
I think I think he knows that the ship is not steady right now, and he sees an opportunity which he saw when we went to get Ange now 2 years ago, pretty much. He put his hat in the ring then, and we did not offer him an interview or anything in that kind of regard. So he ended up at Chelsea. So I think he knows what he's doing. I think he knows that there's big problems at the club and that we are probably most likely going to look for a new manager in the summer with the way things are going. But at the end of the day, I think he's just always loved Tottenham. I see him as the US manager next year. I don't see him leaving now after just becoming the manager. And with, like you say, with them being the host nation, it doesn't make any sense. And I don't think he can juggle being both. I know there was some questions from some people around that. Can he be Spurs' manager and then manage the US in the international breaks and in the World Cup? I don't see that happening. So yeah, I think he's just putting feelers out to see what the club might say. But he didn't get an answer last year. A couple of years ago. I don't think it will happen again.
It's interesting because Marlon to come out and suggest that he's got a strong relationship still with the chairman, who's under a huge amount of increasing pressure. And again, George said it there. He's, going to be a manager going into the host nation of a World Cup, where, as we've said, that doesn't start for a further year. What's there to gain by doing this interview now if he's not looking for an immediate return to the football club? Can you understand that?
Yeah, maybe Daniel's giving him a text to go take the heat off me and let the Spurs dream, because that would be typical good PR. We're not concentrating on the Areolas, everyone else. We're concentrating on, we're going to get Poch back. We're going to get Poch back, because this just seems to happen every single time there's a manager going wrong at Tottenham. And as he's put in the interview now, he's literally just said he's got a great relationship with Daniel, and I won't be surprised if Daniel sent him a text going, let's read this. You know what Spurs are like. They kind of always bring up the same old news, especially when it's season ticket renewals. There'll be some sort of lavish £70 million transfer that they're going to do in the summer. There'll be always positive news surrounding Spurs when the club are in crisis or they need something from the fans. And at this present moment, we're all now, look, we're doing a whole episode on Poch because of what he said, because it takes the attention away of what's really going on at the club for a bit, so they can get their house in order. And I agree with both George and Brian on different things, because if looking at what he said in that interview, if he's twerking for us and he comes back, it means that he's going to accept anything and absolutely everything that Daniel Levy will throw at him and be like, look, I can't give you this player again. He's going to accept it. He's not going to question it. For me, it's kind of saying to us, he doesn't have the ambition to be the best as he did before when he wanted to go PSG and prove himself. He's just kind of looking at going, all I have to do is make top four. There's no pressure, as Conte said, and it's all easy for him. Is that, and I'd love Poch to come back. I know he'll do a good job, a decent job, but is it the right man that we want as Spurs fans to take us forward? That's what we have to think and make a long, hard look to go, we've had him. do we go back, especially under this ownership? And that's
He-
the biggest issue.
He's really
we'll-
difficult to judge, in my opinion, at the moment, because look at the clubs that he's joined after. PSG, I mean, they've got the highest standards in the world when it comes to, you've basically got to win the Champions League or you're out.
You're out.
Sort of situation. And then to then go to Chelsea, it's obviously like you can't necessarily develop players as well at PSG. Well, I mean, Luis Enrique is doing it now, but at the time they weren't. They just had superstars. They had MSN, they had like Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar up front. So it's a difficult one to judge him there. But then he goes to Chelsea, where it's also a complete mess of the new ownership, billion worth of players, not really working out. So it's like, and it was 10 years ago that we brought Pochettino in the first place. Like, football has moved on in the last decade. Can his extremely high intense training work for the demands of football nowadays, with more competitions, more games, fucking Winter World Cups? Like, there's so many questions about whether it works a second time round, which gives me a headache.
I think, G, the reason why there's still a clamour for him out there is because what we've seen in the past kind of 10, 15, 20 years under this ownership is that there's been very few managers that can work under the extremity in terms of the role and what's placed on these managers to be able to make the role work. And to be fair, Mauricio, and tell me if I'm wrong here, guys, to qualify, whilst he didn't win anything here, he got the closest that any manager got closest to landing the biggest prize in the land at Tottenham. And I think the feeling is that what we would do just to go back to that feeling of when it was so good. You know, he normalised finishing above Arsenal. And, you know, the results we had away at Chelsea, you know, even I think we won at Liverpool under him as well. There's been certain times that you can't just get away from the way he made you feel as a Tottenham fan, so proud of the club. And gee, look, there's no guarantee if you go back it's going to work a second time, because you're right. 10 years ago in football is a very, very long time. Football has evolved. Tottenham have changed. It's a completely different squad. It hasn't got a Harry Kane there as well. Can't get away from that. You know, he came into a football club where Harry Kane was just in his infancy of what he was becoming. It's a very, very different Tottenham. It's a very different squad that we've got. But what you do know is you look at Tottenham, there's a lot of good young players there. And one of Mauricio's best traits was being able to develop and improve young players and get the most out of them. And that's why I do feel there's a lot of fans out there that would, I mean, look, if you said to me, God, press a button and it's no sweat to Ange, if you could swap Ange for Pochettino, I mean, I think any, I don't know if it's in a rude way now, I think most fans, I think I'm right in saying that, would probably press that button, because you just feel with Pochettino, it sounds mad me saying this, I think a lot of the fans in the stadium, I don't mean to disrespectful way when I say this, I think a lot of the match-going fans, the lift that would give if Pochettino came back into that stadium. Yes, he's the ex-Chelsea manager. I think, you know, we've had ex-Chelsea managers 2 or 3 times. I think we can see past this now. I think we've just come to a point where
I don't care about that anyway, to be honest with you.
I think we just come to a point where we just want to feel what it is like to love Tottenham again. And I don't feel you guys agree. This is probably the most disconnected I have ever felt as a Tottenham fan. I'm not particularly a fan of the manager. I dislike the ownership. The players, I mean, again, have these players won enough for me to really love these players? You know, again, Brian actually said that before we go on to We're On Air. I mean, you look back at the 90s when it was bad, you still had a Ginola, you still had a Klinsmann, you had a player that you could relate to, that you could really get behind. You know, even under Yol, bless him, you know, Lennon, you know, Azar wasn't the most amazing finisher, but you love Lennon, he got you off the back of your seat. You know, you could go through the squads that we had, and it's just that feeling again where I look at Pochettino, whatever you think about him, yes, he hasn't won anything at Tottenham. I mean, he would argue he's a reason for Tottenham's failure as well, but he was the closest that we ever got to. Maybe you shouldn't go back. I just feel at the moment, you know, what's going to work? You know, we're at this point where we've all just sat here and said in the last hour, it's the same cycle over 18 months. Do any of these managers really work? I mean, Marlon, does Iraola work? Can he work at Tottenham? Again, he's a young, progressive coach. Many would argue there's Poch vibes about him, the way he's gone into Bournemouth. He's taken over a side, with all due respect, Bournemouth, that are probably a side that will be happy to stay in the Premier League. He's taken them into Europe. You know, minimum at the moment. He couldn't even enter in the Champions League. In a way, he's improved the players there. Can someone like that step up and work under the constraints of ENIC and its ownership?
For 2 years, yes. After that, no. I think this club is built in a way that we can only have 18th month managers, where the first couple of months is great, goes up and down for a bit, and then it goes to crap. And I think that's just the way it's been built now since Poch. We're never going to get the Poch era back under this ownership now. It's all done. But the issue that we now have is that they're saying that they're going to go after a progressive manager going forward. Will Iraola work? I think he has a better rapport with the way Bournemouth work than he will if he comes to Spurs. Because if he had the start he had at Bournemouth and he had it at Spurs, he'd be out.
He was a terrible first 10 games. Six points from his first 10 games.
It was like watching Lopetegui at West Ham. And people go, what are you talking about? But that was exactly, everyone was like, no, Bournemouth have messed this up. What are they doing? They shouldn't have got a guy that had no experience.
Right. Bournemouth fans are questioning whether the right decision.
The media was questioning him, and Bournemouth went, no, we're sticking with him. We're going to do exactly what we brought him in to do. And he's turned out okay. But the problem you've got is, okay, he come in next season, 1 game a week, all good. What happens when you get 2 games a week and you've got these injuries and you haven't got the squad that you haven't got at Bournemouth, and you've got these players in front and you've got the squad that Tottenham have provided you? I don't see it working. I really don't see it working. And I know a lot of people are seeing Poch vibes with it, but I don't see how he can come into this club and where he's got a positive aspect at Bournemouth. I think if Ange went to Brighton, he'd have better luck there than he would here, because there's too much to change and culture-wise to change here. And people are like, what am I going on about? But what Brighton do is, it doesn't matter what manager comes in at the moment, because the culture is right, the managers can succeed in that sort of environment. Where if you come here, like I said, we're an 18th month recycle where it's great at the beginning, fans are on your side, then there's that up and down bit, and then it's that last 6 months of, let me get out of here. It's basically, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, but at Spurs. And that's what it is.
I'm a Tottenham manager, get me out of here.
Yeah. And I think, Glasner would have been at Crystal Palace. He probably would have been perfect at the time. But again, he had a period, like if he had to start, he had a Palace where he hadn't won till October. We're not giving him a chance. Like us fans as well, we're not going to give him a chance. And because we've got a certain standard, and it's going to take a certain type of manager to come in. And unfortunately, Conte was that manager. No one liked his football. Not what most Spurs fans were moaning about the football, but he got the results. And what do you do in that situation? Because the fans are not happy, but we're getting results. You get a manager where you are happy with it in certain games, but they're not getting the results. It's a catch-22 situation for everybody.
What's your gauge on it for you, Bri, in terms of the shortlist of managers that have been listed on there? I mean, Marco Silva as well has been listed, a guy that obviously at Fulham, to be fair to him, has done a fairly good job. You've got to consider, I know again, that Everton didn't have the rub of the green there, but what's your gauge on it for you, bro? Where would you go next if you were tasked with that job?
I'm going to go where I went before Ange Postecoglou was appointed. I'll probably get some from people disagreeing, but there is someone on that list that I like, and I really, really like Thomas Frank. I know you say more defensive. I really like him. You look what he's done at Bournemouth, where he's been backed by a very successful board. You look at where you also look at it. He's had to deal with losing players, the equivalent of our big stars in Tony and Raya. Dealt with it. He's been able to coach players, make them better with smaller resources. When he came to us, when they beat us, when Harry Kane scored that free kick, he adapts. I see things on him when he does interviews. I think he coaches his team well. I'm a big, big fan of Thomas Frank. And I know a lot of people, there's like going, oh, you mean the team we did the double over this season? Well, currently they're above us in the league. With a smaller team, not as good quality. I think Thomas Frank is very, very underrated. And as much as Iraola, obviously there's the kind of comparison to Pochettino football and the way they're playing. I am a big fan of Thomas Frank, and I said it before Postecoglou, and I'm going to stick to it. When Pochettino went to Southampton, no one knew who he was. He obviously developed at Southampton and became what he was, then came to us. Thomas Frank hasn't had that opportunity. We've seen what he's done at Brentford, where It's to stay up every season, but he's surpassing that with lesser restrictions, lesser resources, everything that they're doing. I think he could do a very good job at Tottenham. I would love to see Thomas Frank given a chance.
It's interesting because I see, a lot of the viewers' comments here is around the fact when it comes to managing those 2 games a week, who is going to be able to do that? It's interesting, G, coming over to you because, again, on this point, Marco Silva, to some degree, I don't think, again, in the most recent years, he's had that need to do 2 games a week. Fulham have not, I don't think, Mark, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've got European football under him at this point. They've done, again, well under him. They've progressed under him. Thomas Frank, again, with Brentford, they've had that situation where they've not had to play 2 games a week. Same really with Iraola. So I think, look, we're talking here as if Tottenham are going to win the Europa League and they're going to have 2 games a week next season. The reality is that whoever comes in next season, if Tottenham don't win the Europa League, they are only going to have to manage just 1 game a week. I do understand the concerns and reservations when it comes to 2 games a week, but that's surely down back to G on the board to give the manager the ability to be able to rotate, to have a squad that can play twice a week. I mean, because otherwise, who is going to be able to work here? I know Kieran McKenna, Tottenham are a big fan of him. Obviously, he's done very well at Ipswich again. It's a very, very young manager. Scott Parker, again, has done wonders in terms of Burnley when it comes to their defensive record. It just feels now we're past that point. I don't know if you feel, George, under this ownership, they're not going to go back to a win now manager because, quite honestly, they never give the manager the tools to win now. So it feels like whoever is going to be next in Tottenham's managerial shortlist, it's going to be another project, but it needs to have more instant results. Is that fair to suggest that?
Yeah, it's definitely fair. And I think this is where I'm like just so tired of that. I mean, we've said it on previous.
We've done this every 18 months.
So tired of the manager.
George, you've been on this show for nearly 7-8 years. You've gone through all the. I think you've been here with us since Pochettino. So you've been here the 7-year cycle, and you're still here, and we're still doing the same discussion.
Yeah, for me, it's just I personally don't see it working out for, to be honest, any of those 3 that were mentioned before. I think Thomas Frank, for example, him as a manager, I think he's brilliant. I think he's fantastic. I think he would absolutely flop at Spurs for a couple of reasons. I think, one, he's got the setup perfect at Brentford. They work in an amazing unity, whether it comes to the recruitment, to adjusting for when they start to play, like using the data-led approach, but using it properly, as we've all heard. It's not quite working the same way in the background of Spurs. And I don't see how he could work well hand in hand with what Spurs offer him and what would be able to get. He would basically be told, here's the players we're getting, do something with it. I don't see that working for him at all. I think their whole recruitment strategy and how they play football, it works in such a coherent way, which is why he turned down the Man United job as well. He was up for the Man United job recently. So I don't even see him choosing us, let alone us wanting to get him in the first place. And again, I've voiced, as much as I think Iraola is probably the best out of those, I've voiced my concerns as well. It's obviously the tactics are slightly different, but the style of football is the same as Ange, where it comes to really high pressing, sort of carefully winning the ball high up the pitch, quick movements, like a lot of energy. Like there are similarities to what Ange is doing, and you're seeing the similarities in the outcome. Bournemouth have had a lot of injuries this year. That's with 1 game a week. I've seen fans complaining recently, literally as of last week, because they're on a bit of a bad run at the moment. They can't break down low blocks. Where have we heard that before at Tottenham Hotspur? So I just don't see how these managers fit under this current ownership, because whether it's a win now manager, whether it is a project manager, we're not giving these guys the tools to want to win. Conte could have won with Spurs, but you had to go a different strategy of buying the best players that are good now. Whether that's a Skriniar, whether that's a I'm trying to remember who else he was after at the time.
Bastoni,
Hakimi, Bastoni, like the players that are doing well now.
Yep,
it can work if you offer that.
Yep,
in my opinion, Ange's football can work in the sense that you needed high quality wingers. That was like the key to everything what we saw when we first brought him in, and a good 6 to cover to help the 2 centre backs, because we know that the fullbacks are going forward. We didn't have that, so again, we can't play his way, and I think it'll be the same for like a Frank or whoever else it might be. So I'm just really tired of, to be honest with you, of this whole merry-go-round of managers. And as of right now, I just don't know who's the best option next, because I feel like we're just going to end up having the same conversation in 18 months' time.
We will. I just want to say one thing, Ricky. Crackers and I say something very, very similar and have done for a while. Nothing changes until everything changes. It doesn't matter, like George just said, doesn't matter what manager comes in or what philosophy, they won't be back with the players they wanted. It won't. The directors of football won't be the ones that the manager wanted. Nothing works with this football club. And every time we bring in a new manager up, it's a new philosophy, a new formation, too many attacking players for a defensive manager, too many defensive players for an attacking manager. Until there is a complete factory reset at this football club with either new ownership or for once and for all, this man staying as far away from football, which I don't believe he would for 1 minute, we're going to repeat the same process no matter who comes in. We could bring someone mentioned Zinedine Zidane, not that he'd ever come to us. He could come. He won't be back with what he needs. We've seen what he doesn't matter who comes in. They won't get what they need. They won't be given full control of what they need to do because he'll always meddle and everything will keep happening and repeating itself whilst this ownership is here.
Brian, I totally agree with you on it. And that's why, Miles, it kind of brings us to the question, why do managers want to come to this club? Because as Brian so eloquently puts it there, with all due respect, you're never really given the profile of players you need to be successful in your own way. There's now a feeling that really success at Tottenham is finishing in the top 4. It's always felt it is that way. There's not necessarily a kind of ambition to win. So what makes this job attractive for somebody? Yes, it's a great stadium. Yes, it's a lovely training ground. Yes, there's actually some good players there. But if really, like Brian says there, you're not going to be given the players that you actually need to win. And this is the thing about Iraola. I'm not sure if anyone caught the interview from Bill Foley, the Bournemouth chairman. He said that Iraola is a very, very, very hungry manager that wants to win. And I honestly think now you come to a point where, look, managers aren't stupid. And when you look at all the previous managers Tottenham have had and what they've done in their respective careers, and even like someone like Nuno, look, I mean, again with Nuno, I think there was a lot of fans that felt in that moment because of what the club was going through and the fact they went for Conte and that summer before, it never worked out. And I think Nuno at that time was like the 110th choice, bless him, that he didn't even get his own coaching staff when he came to Tottenham. So how is that ever going to realistically work? I mean, what attracts someone to this job, Miles, now? Is the job as attractive as what it once was?
No, well, not for a manager who's ambitious. It's more of a manager with an ego. And what I mean by that is you look at someone like Ange, he's like, you know what, I think I could go in there and do a job. He knows how bad the situation was before he came here because Conte and Mourinho had told him. But look at those two. They've got egos. And I think that's going to be us going forward is people that think they think, you know what, I think I could do a job. And it doesn't really matter. It ain't gonna hurt anything about me because everyone fails at Tottenham. If I do anything remotely, anything decent, I can go and get another job and I'll be okay because no one sees the Tottenham job as a step down. Like Ange's reputation with this, yeah, he might play the football he's done, but everyone go, but it's Tottenham, so it's fine. But I just want to go back to that list of the 3 managers that were named as well. Where in the blue moon do you think they got that from? Do you think they just went on social media, went on YouTube and just went to all the fans? Who they've been mentioning for the last 6 months? Because every single name on there, every YouTuber is mentioned, everyone on social media is mentioned. What happened to the other managers that are out there? They can't be the only 3 you're going to be looking at because, again, where's that list suddenly appeared from? Oh, yeah, it appeases the fans. It's the guys that they've all been mentioning. They're the ones in the comments of people's channels. The club's not stupid. Because all of a sudden you mention these particular 3, the 3 that have been mentioned for so long. Come on. They're putting the wool over our eyes, and we've got to be able to see it. Because I'm sorry, you're going to sit there and tell me there's not other managers in Europe that could do a decent job. There's other managers out there. How have Bournemouth gone to where they've gone to and found an Areola? Thomas Frank and Brentford is not going to be broken.
But also Brighton as well. I mean, Brighton as well, to be honest with you. On that point, Miles, I mean, George, Brighton, they seem to unearth, De Zerbi, Hertzler. These are guys that have really not been on any kind of radar. And at the time when teams going higher, these managers are thinking, who are they? But they've done their due diligence. They've done their data research. Yeah. And with all due respect now, back onto Miles' point there, we're a club that is meant to be following a data-driven model. So you would like to think there should be behind the scenes number crunching, data crunching of them looking at potential successors, because it goes back to, I think, the point you made earlier, George. Brighton already know who the next manager is going to be after Hurstler. They've already got a shortlist lined up. I think any football club of any real credence, of any real credibility, will have a shortlist or a succession plan for everything, whether it's losing a player, whether it's losing a manager, whether it's losing a coaching staff. We as a club just seem so reactive, rather than proactive to everything about this club, everything we do, everything.
Yeah, 100%. And I just kind of want to clarify one of my points before, because I feel it might have been lost in some people in the comments. Me saying that I think there's going to be issues with the three that were mentioned and I'm tired of it does not mean that I want Ange forever. Like, I think Iraola could do a fantastic job, but I think people need to lower their expectations on some of these people, because to me, it sounds like when the people are suggesting people like Iraola and so on and so forth, a lot of the times it's the point that they're like this next coming of Christ and they're going to be this incredible new manager, which in fairness, he could be. It happened with Pochettino. So many people at the time when Pochettino came in, no one really heard of him or thought he would could be the manager that he ended up being. So in Spurs' case, it's probably better that it's managers that aren't seen as like the big dogs like your Mourinho's and Conte's. My point was more just do not be surprised if we're going to be in this same conversation in 18 months' time because of the tools that are going to be provided to these managers. And that kind of gets onto this point that you're bringing now about Brighton being a well-run club. It's something, the way they do it is what we should be aspiring to, but we can be on that higher level because we have more money coming in. We have a more attractive club than Brighton, if we're being honest. Like, no disrespect to them, but
you're
right.
You're right.
We're in London, the training ground, whatever. Like, we in theory should be doing how Brighton are ran, just on a much higher level. And I just don't trust that we're doing that right now. So if they have a manager in mind to succeed, Ange, that sticks with this whole maybe attacking football, but just different tactics and can work the players well, then fine. Like, go for it. Bring that person in. I'm just worried at this current moment, the way we are run, I don't see that working for the current managers that are being suggested and doing the rounds.
If you were, George, to kind of think who they would turn to next, do you generally just have no idea at the moment?
I think Iraola is like the top one out of the ones that I've seen. Like, I don't really know anything about some of the people that are suggesting. I think it's Stuttgart's manager. A lot of people were suggesting as well. I don't really know too much about him, right? Because he's having a great season, so I can't really comment on him.
Yep.
And like you said, if we are doing this data approach, there probably is a manager we haven't really heard of, like Ange Postecoglou was before we got him. But in terms of the ones that we all know and are being suggested, I think Iraola will be the number one for sure. And I think it can be a very decent option. I just still think there's going to be issues down the line, similar to what we're seeing now with Ange.
Interesting. I mean, Bride, what's your gauge and how you feel this is going to end up for the 135th time when we're looking to search for a manager?
Like George was saying, you want to use, we use Brighton as this example. What Brighton also do brilliantly well is they will sell their players at peak prices. They will cash in and go, right, we'll use this, and then bang, we will use this to reinvest.
Belieber, what a player he's been. They lost Casado, they can bring Belieber, and it's actually unbelievable, really, what they've done there.
They lost Basuma, but what they've done is they've planned ahead of it. Right, this is the next one on the conveyor belt. They are, like George said, they are so many steps ahead, and they sell at the peak of their powers. Like, for example, when we could have sold Dyer to United or various other players at the peak of their power, but we hold on to them. I don't know. I actually said, showing my age, I don't know how many of your viewers are of my age or older. If you remember a movie called Brewster's Millions, there's a part where he tries to buy an election to stop people voting for the two, and he says, vote for none of the above. I want to buy your votes. Don't vote for them. They're all corrupt to each other. I think we should do that with managers, because we should vote for none of the above, because whoever comes in, we're going to be here again. We are literally, how many times, it doesn't matter if we have win now managers, young managers, inexperienced shock managers like Martin Yule. Doesn't matter which way you want to go down, whatever managerial path we've gone down, they've all ended with this. They have all ended at this point. So it's just going to keep repeating itself. Like we've all said, we're all going to have our speculation or our favourites who we want, whether it be Iraola, myself, Frat, or whoever it be. We'll all have a typical Spurs. Let's have an argument and go to war as a fan base over this manager. Is he right? Is he wrong? Is he good? Is he bad? And 18 months later, we'll be right back where we started. and repeating this again. It's why, like you mentioned before, the great work that Change for Tottenham are doing and everything that's coming up is just vital, because we are always just going to finish the loop, finish the circle, and be right back where we are here. So as much as I want Frank, and I would love him to come and get given a chance, I hope he runs a million miles from us, because we'll just screw him up. And I'll say that for Iraola and every other manager, because vote for none of the above. I'm going to stick with that. Vote for none of the above.
I will say I do like Glasnow a lot, and I liked him when he was at Frankfurt.
Very good manager.
Which I think is another good option for us. But again, I think Crystal Palace are similar to us. It's quite difficult to negotiate a fee with them. So it'll be an interesting one to see if that's even possible.
It just comes back to that point that you guys have said it there. I mean, Miles, you look at really where we are as a club right now. You know, I look at a fan base that is so disconnected. You know, they're disconnected with the ownership. They're disconnected to something with the manager, with a lot of the players. I mean, it's just, it's a really sad time at the moment to be here again, isn't it, as a Spurs fan, where the one thing you want in your football club is to have hope. And we have, I don't mean to be morbid, we've got very little hope, haven't we, right now, Miles? Anything is going to really change until, like we said, something fundamentally changed at the top. And again, with that, we've got no guarantee as to when that is. You just feel, even if you were kind of being told in your mind, right, you've got 2 more years of this to suffer and you're going to get a change, you could think, right, I can bear that, because I know at least in 2 years' time, I'm going to get something different. But the problem is we've got no kind of gauge as to how much longer we've got to keep going through this, where as a fan, I can talk as a fan, and the amount of time we give up and dedicate to this football club, again, through family, through friends, kids, I mean, it's just like, it's soul destroying, isn't it? Again, and I want to come on here, and I'm actually, I always say this, outside of Tottenham, I'm actually a really positive person in life, but I think about this football club and it just drains me. Like, I'm genuinely drained when I think about Tottenham at the moment. And all the fans, again, I interact with on the street, or again, social media wise, you just look at each other and you think, what is going on? I mean, it's like, here we are again. We're literally here again. 2 years to the day of Conte's rant, we are here again, Miles.
It's not surprising, and I think George made an absolutely great point earlier about, because everyone always talks about the Brighton model. However, we need to do a Brighton model but on a Champions League scale, because it's all right because we're trying to do the Brighton model on the model they're doing now and trying to bring in these players. But this is probably why we're suffering, because everyone has to remember where Brighton were a few years back. That's where we are. Brighton are never going to be in where our ambition should be, which is Champions League, because they will never be able to get to that point unless they make enough money or they start spending big on some of that data and let on bigger players and wages that go with it. So Brighton are going to hit their peak and probably just keep maintaining it. But as for us, we kind of need to look at it in different aspects of, because whoever's reading data at the club right now are they reading it correctly? Are they reading it the right way? Are they bringing in the right players to suit the manager? This is the whole issue with the whole club. They go through one strategy, go through another, and go through another. And I think this is now what is being the disconnect between us and the board and the club, because every 5 minutes they're changing. They just don't know what they want to do. And I think that's why there's a big, massive disconnect between everybody at the moment. Even us fans, we argue with each other. Some want Ange in, some want Ange out, some want Poch back, some don't want him. And it's just all split. When you go back to the Poch era, it's probably the most united we have ever been. And I think that's what the biggest issue is right now for everybody. And Ricky, if you said another 2 years we had to go through this, I'm sorry, I can't come on the pod anymore. I'm sorry. I'm gonna wait until those 2 years are up. I get what you mean.
You know what, mate? I know
you say
that. You say that though. I think if you said to people, right, in 2 years' time, I'm only just plucking that out of thin air, you're gonna get a change. You would think, right, at least I've got an end goal to work towards.
Yeah.
Right now, we've got no indication of when there's going to be a change. So you just feel like you are stuck in that hamster wheel, and that's why, like, the new.
All I say to people is, like, the way this club has always been run with Levy, there's always an end goal. There is always going to be a part where we're going to get up, because no matter when we've had some bad times, like let's take the bit between AVB and Sherwood, we then got Poch. The bit before when we got Rande Ramos and we we're nearly getting relegated.
Miles, we've got to be lucky, Miles. Miles, we've got to be lucky that he stumbles on somebody, because there's no football break. I don't mean to be rude, It's not a footballing. It's not. There's no footballing people there at the top.
But the board always seem to somehow get lucky at some point, and they do. Like the history has shown you. If we're going to go by history, they will show you that they at some point they will get lucky and stumble across someone who randomly just does the job well. We've had the Martignoles. We've had even Villas-Boas had a good season. So unfortunately, it's like for the club right now, yes, I can sit there and go, right now it's crap, and it's probably the worst kind of ever been. But I tell you this, in about a year's time, they'll probably stumble across someone by luck and by chance. And I know people say your luck runs out, but then the same thing will happen with Brighton one day. Their luck will run out with how they're being run, and they can only sell them a certain amount of players.
I just think they've got the right people in those football clubs that are doing the right due diligence behind the scenes.
But for now, and I what's his name? Paul Barber I think Paul Barber is very key, and so is the chairman. But there's gonna be a time when someone's gonna read that data and not read it correctly. And look, Burnley. Let's take Burnley. Burnley are data led. They came up, went down. They got companies offered Bayern Munich. Now they've got Scott Parker in, and it's kind of like, well, the data's good enough for the Championship, but it's not good enough for the Premier League, and that's the biggest issue. Because if everyone starts going down the same model, it's all going to come to a head. And I tell you this: Spurs will get lucky. Spurs will get lucky in the next 2 years. There'll be a manager that comes in, and we'll be like, "Oh, how they stumbled across this one." But what they will do, as they normally do, after about 3 years, when it does work out, ENIC will ruin it, as per normal.
Well, I think we're at that point where I know many people feel the same, that we're in that situation where Newcastle were under Ashley in those dying days of his reign, where they just wanted a change and they weren't really that bothered about who came in. They just wanted a change. And I do understand there's a lot of political views about who people want to come into their football club. But at the end of the day, all I just know is that from a family of Tottenham fans, and I've got brothers and cousins that are mad Tottenham, this is probably one of the trickiest periods to be in, because you just want some hope that it's going to get better. And there's no indication of that now, as we look to probably at some point go through another managerial cycle. And again, I will say this, that's why, again, I've never really held any anger towards Ange Postecoglou. He's one of a long line of managers that have been fouled at this football club for not giving the tools that he wants. So look, I guess this is one of those shows where, again, it's to be continued. Like the journey that is Tottenham, I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful George Achillea. George, we haven't found a solution like a lot of these shows. It just is more questions to be answered to come, right?
Oh, yeah. And plenty more to come over the next 2 weeks until we get our beloved Spurs back. But yeah, appreciate you having me back on. This has been great sort of venting and getting things off our chest, and nice to speak to the guys as always. So yeah, thank you everyone. Look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Pleasure, G. Of course, George Achillea across all the socials. Got to say, guys, we've had nearly over 7,000 of you that are watching the show live. Thank you, as always, for your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs, even when it isn't post-match shows. Keep liking, keep subscribing. We really appreciate that. We've got some good shows to bring to you during this international break. We really, really do appreciate all the support. And again, bearing in mind that Spurs aren't on, to kind of have to subject yourself to more content around Tottenham. God bless you all. We love you very, very much. Bri, lovely to have you back on. Thank you ever so much. Really appreciate it. Brian, where can everybody find you? And again, I know you're going to be over here for the upcoming protest too, right? That's the plan.
I am indeed. First of all, Ricky and everyone at Last Word on Spurs, thanks for having me on again. It's great to be with you guys and the other panelists. Everyone in the chat, hope you all enjoy your evening. Yeah, you can find me on Tottenham on Tour, and I'm very, very much looking forward to. I've actually changed my flight to a week earlier, just so I can make sure that I'm there for a certain protest and I can be a part of it with Change for Spurs and lend my support to them and everything they are doing. So I hope to see a lot of people there, and really looking forward to being back home for a few weeks. But thanks for having me on, Ricky.
Pleasure, Brian. Thank you so much. Miles, thank you. Sorry for the panic message of about 10 hours ago when you're thinking, how are we going to navigate this
signal? I came calling now, no problem, Ricky. As always, I love coming on, and I do a lot of work with Brian in the past, and George is great to be on with. So I'm glad to be here. And do you know what? The comments, I love reading them. Sometimes I get distracted because I like to see what everyone's writing, and it's like, as I always say, we're in it together, and that's the big thing. We are in it together. Come on, Spurs.
There is no get out. There is no get out. It's it does feel like Groundhog Day at the moment. And again, God, take me back to those shows we did, George, years ago, where I was salivating in love and looking forward to the next game. And at the moment, we need a pick me up. We need a lift. We need a lift. I'm not sure what's to come, of course, between now and the end of the season, but fingers crossed, whatever you think about Ange Postecoglou, if there's some kind of way that he navigates Spurs to win the Europa League, I think we have a day off about the debate and we just enjoy Tottenham winning a trophy, because for what we've gone through this season, I just know the fans alone that travel home and away, like you do, G, that make those journeys. I'm sure you're sad as well, G. The away fans, it's been a tough, can't even say season. I mean, what, 3-4 seasons, G? That you closing on this?
Oh yeah, you can't deny a Spurs fan's loyalty in any sense of the word, whether it's people going or watching from abroad or whatever. Like we've been through the ringer for the level that we want to be at. So yeah, fair credit to everyone that's, whether they're getting up at 4 a.m. to watch games, traveling to watch games, or even just watching them at home, man. It's been a tough ride. And we'll keep doing it because we love the club. It's always going to happen. There's always going to be debates about managers, about players, about ownerships. But at the end of the day, we've got a cup competition that we're in, a European cup competition. If we can do the miracle and get to the final, my word, we just live for that moment as well, Spurs fans. So
of course,
fingers crossed it all works out and we get that moment.
Yeah. For those that are wondering, I wasn't going to bring up the fact that it's Chelsea next. I wasn't going to try to depress us all too much. I'm sure we'll cover that in the weeks ahead. But I want to say again a massive thank you to wonderful George Achillea. George, thank you. The wonderful Brian Dagul. And of course, Marlon at the Spurs Kings. Go and check them out. They've got some great content always over there at the Spurs Kings. Guys, thank you for all your incredible support for the show. We really, really do appreciate it. Like I say, we've got some shows planned during this international break to try and keep you engaged and keep you hopefully going. Thank you again for the support from us all here. Please keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on you Spurs.